This is the comprehensive logo design questionnaire. It's a lot more detailed than the questionnaires that I've had in previous courses, since this one is dedicated to garnering information pertaining to more in-depth projects. The comprehensive logo design questionnaire is split into 3 sections: contact details, company insight, and design. Each contains a range of questions related to what you'd expect from each of those titles. So let's take a look at each of the questions in detail, starting with the first in the contact details section, which is the project start date. The answer to this question obviously lets you know if the client wishes to start sooner or later, and it allows you to keep a reservation in your agenda to start work on the project. Moving on to question 2, it asks the client when they expect to receive their initial logo design samples, and this serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it allows you to gauge how long you have from the start until delivery of the samples, so that you can work with your agenda, and it allows you to judge whether this is an urgent project, which of course you can charge a premium price for. The client should be realistic when answering these 2 questions and give adequate time and appropriate financial compensation for high priority work. Question 3 asks for the client's name, assuming that you don't already have it. Not only does this allow for you to clarify the name of the contact on the project, it also stipulates that this person has completed the questionnaire. Question 4 asks for the names of other people involved in the project. This is particularly important since the main contact may be replaced by someone else should they fall sick or go on vacation. It's critical that we know that the person we're communicating with, or people, are actually permitted to have sensitive information disclosed to them in the project. Question 5 asks for the URL of the company website. The company website, should they have one, usually has a good amount of information pertaining to the company, so this serves as a vital component in our research. Not to mention, if they already have an old logo or branding established, which they wish to rid of or improve, this can be reviewed also, and we can design a logo in accordance with what we see. Question 6 asks for the contact email address. This may or may not be different from the email address from which they initially made contact. Usually this is the email address on the company's website domain. Question 7 asks for the contact telephone number. This of course is used for the purpose of communication, should you wish to use this method. Many logo designers will handle a project effectively by email alone, since visual references can be sent back and forth. Though initial contact serves well in connecting with a prospect or client on the telephone. Question 8 asks for the business address, and this serves 2 purposes. Should you ever wish to use snail mail, you can send material to this address. Most importantly, you can use Google Maps to review their premises and the look of it if it isn't on their website. This can potentially give you an idea of the size of the business and an idea of the company brand. So that sums up the contact details section on the comprehensive logo design questionnaire. Here we have the company insight section of the comprehensive logo design questionnaire. The first question simply asks, what is the name of your company? The likelihood is that this text will be what is used in the logo design. There may be some margin for further discussion on this, however, since clients sometimes include things in their company name which are unnecessary to the logo design, which can hinder the aesthetics, such as LTD, standing for limited, or LLC, meaning limited liability company. This is a good point to remember. Question 2 asks for the tagline, assuming that the company has one. This might feature in the logo design, and a question later is asked relating to this. With this in mind, it's worth noting considerably long taglines at this point, since they won't incorporate well into an effective logo design. Question 3 relates to the date the company was founded. This usually gives us insight into how long the business has been operating, and it gives us an indication if they have already established their logo and general branding, in which case they may not want to veer away from it too much. Additionally, the age of the company can potentially affect the design approach. We can, for example, design a logo in a vintage style to reflect the company heritage. Or if they have only just emerged, we can design in a fresh, modern style. These aren't hard and fast rules, merely something to consider. Question 4 asks of the number of staff. This gives us an indication as to the size of the business, which may or may not affect the design approach too. As an example, if we're designing a logo for a small family-run business, we might feature personal elements in the design. Question 5 inquires about the undertakings and functions of the business. In a nutshell, this is where the client will stipulate their products and/or services. Clients often become passionate about their offerings, so they can divulge a lot of information at this point, and this wealth of information is usually welcomed by the designer, since the more we know about a business, the more effectively we can handle the project. Question 6 asks, who is your target market? This will affect the design approach in one of two ways. If the demographic is tight, there will be grounds to be strict in the design approach. For example, if a product was aimed at 16 to 25-year-olds, then there would be an aesthetic in the design introduced which would appeal to that demographic. If, however, the age range was broad, say from 20 to 70-year-olds, the design would need to hold a safe and universal quality. Question 7 asks, what keywords or phrases might be associated with your business? There will be a populated reply here in the case of established businesses, since people will have commented and reviewed them multiple times. As stated in the brackets, this information will help to fine-tune the design in accordance with the perceptions of the target market. The data will also help to meet the expectations of the target market if the current company brand is well established. Newer companies may not have this information to share from this source, but they are free to state keywords or perceptions they would like people to associate with the business. Question 8 asks, is your company unique or one of many? If the company is unique and new, the designer may be able to start with a clean slate with a lot of creative freedom at their disposal. If the company, however, is one of many, this isn't a negative thing, but it does mean that the logo design will be approached in such a way. If the company, however, is one of many, this isn't a negative thing, but it does mean that the logo design will be approached in such a way so that it sits within the market effectively without looking odd or out of place. As we construct a mood board later in the process, we populate it with competitor logos to consider the look and feel of them. This can inevitably influence the creative direction we head in. Question 9 asks, who are your regional / national / worldwide competitors? This question lets us know specifically who the company is up against, and so the competitors' brands and logos will be analysed during the research process. If emphasis is placed upon worldwide companies rather than smaller local businesses, even if the company seems like it's punching above its weight, it does give us a clear idea of the image that they wish to establish. The competitors will be thoroughly researched with concise case studies of each later in the process. This in turn also gives us insight into the industry as a whole. Finally, in this section, question 10 asks, which key points separate you from competitors? This is where the client stipulates their USPs, unique selling points. This gives us further insight into the business, which otherwise may not be evident. There may be something very unique to the business that could be featured and even emphasized in the logo design. A good business plan always has a quality USP in place, so this is where the client will take time to divulge. So this brings us to the end of the company insight section of the comprehensive logo design questionnaire. Here we are in the design section of the comprehensive logo design questionnaire. Jumping into question 1, which reads, what style of logo do you envisage? The first option is text with a lateral symbol, or in other words, a symbol to the side. This could be at either side, left or right. The next option is text with symbol above. This could mean a symbol centered or slightly offset at either side. The next is an enclosure logo, which is basically a concise, tidy badge shape, containing text only or symbol and text. The final option is text only, which is self-explanatory. Question 2 asks, what feelings and emotions would you like to project through your logo? The answer to this question will affect both the design and colours selected. Even if the client has stated the specific colours, there's still margin to adjust each to lean towards a figurative mood. And design form, most importantly, can be tailored to suit. We can, for example, feature a triangular shape pointing upwards to depict stability, power and union, or flowing rounded shapes to evoke a sense of calm and assurance. Question 3 asks, at a glance, how should the logo depict your business in the market? This question does bear a slight resemblance to the last. However, this question refers to the depiction of the business in the actual industry and market. In other words, the question asks, how should the business be portrayed in comparison to similar companies? We could, for example, design a logo which would look otherwise formal outside of the industry, yet in contrast to those companies inside the industry, the logo might look somewhat upbeat and quirky. So there is a general feel to a logo and there's a feel which is industry specific. Question 4 inquires, where will the logo be used? As competent logo designers, we naturally design in vector so that the design is suitable for a whole range of applications, from paper printing to material cutouts to embroidery, to name but a few examples. We just need to ask this question to confirm that the client doesn't have anything impossible in mind for the design, which will potentially cause problems later in the project or after the project has been completed. A pencil manufacturer, as an example, might request a detailed logo, yet that logo printed on the side of a pencil at a very small size would be completely ineffective. Question 5 asks, where is the main place your logo will be used? This question is asked after the last, just so that we can understand the primary place where the logo is intended to be applied. If we are given a specific answer, we will perhaps approach the design differently, so that it can be utilised in that application optimally. Vinyl vehicle graphics, for instance, would be optimal in their application if the logo, or logo symbol at least, consisted of one or a few shapes, rather than being very detailed distributed shapes. In the cases presented in this question and the last, we usually arrive at the discussion with the client about simplicity, the primary point and the safest avenue we have as designers. Not to mention arguably the most effective design approach with regards to logo design and branding in general. Question 6 asks whether the logo should be simple in its form or detailed. It is here where we can clearly identify if there's going to be any application conflicts based upon the facts stated when we covered the previous two questions. If the client has a detailed design in mind, but their application requirements, particularly the main one, would benefit from a simple design, it's time again to consider having a short discussion with the client about the merits of simplicity. Question 7 asks, do you have any special visual styles you'd like the logo to have? In brackets here, it's advised that the client should consider the company age and whether or not this should reflect in the design. A well-established business could be given a vintage slant as an example. At this point, the client is likely and is encouraged to comment upon design trends, current or past, which they favour. This may or may not relate directly to logo design in general, but it's usually something valuable which can be transposed to make use of in the project. So this covers the first page of the design category. We'll continue to explore this category in the next lecture. So continuing with the design category and jumping into question 8, it asks if the client has any preferred colours. Now this is a straightforward question, though it's important that we understand what kind of colours the client is referring to when they use certain terms. Royal blue, as an example, has differences between instances of its use. Some of these royal blues are darker, some are lighter than the others. Nonetheless, we have a good feel for what royal blue looks like. On the other hand, if the client requests silver, then we need to inquire further, since silver isn't a colour, it's a metal, in which case we have to use the colour grey to simulate it, and there are many different tones of grey and looks of silver. Should we be lucky, the client will stipulate CMYK values or values in RGB or Pantone. Sometimes a client will link to a colour or send an image. In many of those cases, we can pick out a colour with the eyedropper tool to transpose those colours into CMYK alternatives. Question 9 asks, are there any colours which should be avoided? This is a fairly obvious one, and if preferred colours have already been requested, it's one that's arguably unnecessary. However, this question is asked to see if there are any conflicts. If a client requested silver as a colour, for instance, and claimed here that they wish to avoid the colour grey, there would need to be further discussion on this. Question 10 asks, what is the maximum number of colours you'd like in your logo? In brackets, the client is advised to consider simplicity and complexity of their general branding and printing. If the company wished to have their vinyl sticker branding assigned to their fleet of vehicles, for example, which reflected the colours of the logo, they need to question whether they want a rainbow of colours on their vans, assuming that their logo has a rainbow of colours. A company too can't effectively own a rainbow of colours, since it's too much for a person to take in. But they can own a certain blue and a certain orange, and those colours are impressed upon the business and the mind of the perceiver, which in turn forms the company brand. Needless to say, even colour is no exception to the rule of simplicity. If the client is a little bit adventurous here with regards to colour, then there's case for a discussion. There are no concrete rules, however, and there are logos pertaining to large and successful businesses which do have many colours, but the aforementioned points are the main ones to bear in mind. Question 11 asks if the tagline, should they have one, be included in the logo. If the company has a tagline, it would have been stated earlier in the questionnaire. The tagline sometimes gives us insight into the business. It's often like a summarised mission statement or description. Besides that, it can be an important component of the logo to communicate the same to everyone who views it. Bear in mind the length of the stated tagline as mentioned earlier, since it may not fit neatly in the design, especially if the company name is short. If this is the case, it's advised to converse with the client to see if they have any adjustments which can be made to the tagline to make it more concise and therefore more better fitting and aesthetically pleasing in the logo design. Question 12 asks, please state the brand names of logos which appeal to you. In brackets, it's advised that these companies can pertain to any industry. So here they can state any logos which they like the look of. These logos could apply to any business sector. One might apply to a TV channel and the other an environmental organisation, as two examples. This just helps us to get into the mind of the client to discover what they assume a logo design to be and to uncover what kind of logo designs evoke and arouse their senses. Question 13 asks, please state the brand names of logos in your industry which appeal to you. So this question focuses upon their specific industry this time. Quite often a business is founded by being inspired by another or other businesses. In a nutshell, businesses have their idols, who they aspire to be. Quite often you'll see these inspirational companies stated here, and their logos being part of the identities are highly favoured too, so the information stated herein is something to note. The client may wish to borrow a certain visual style which they assume has led or contributed towards the success of a particular inspirational business. Reaching the final, question 14, which asks, is there anything else which you'd like to state which would be useful to the project? And so the client is given opportunity here to empty themselves of their emotions, expectations, ideas and suggestions which the questions didn't perhaps give opportunity for them to cover. They are also encouraged to attach any visual references relating to any of the questions which would be useful. So with those questions all covered, that concludes both the design category and the comprehensive logo design questionnaire as a whole. As an end note, you may have noticed that there is no question or questions which relate to font styles. As advanced logo designers, we should be able to use our initiative when reviewing the client's industry and competitors as to what kind of fonts would be suitable. There are a vast pool of fonts for us to choose from, and they fall into different categories which tend to overlap. So I find it best to select a font based upon research and experience as a designer. In turn, this demonstrates to the client that we are providing our value as a professional who can effectively select a font suited to the business. In text-based logos, the font or custom type is literally the only entity in the logo, so we need to hit the nail on the head firmly in our choices. So that concludes the overview of the comprehensive logo design questionnaire. It's this crucial information which we'll use as the base to converse with the client further before work commences on the research stage. In the resources, you can grab a form version of the PDF questionnaire. Provided that the client uses Adobe PDF Reader, which is free to download, they can answer every question quickly and easily by typing in their information and ticking checkboxes. They simply save the document when they're finished and they return it to you by email. This PDF can be branded to suit your needs.